Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eula Clark, Mayor of the City of Stuart, calling together the regular meeting of the Stuart City Commission. Today is November 22nd, 2021, at 5:30 p.m. at our City Commission chambers located at 121 Southwest Flagler Avenue in Stuart, Florida. As we think about the start of our meeting, we think of the season of Thanksgiving, and we think of all the things that we have passed through this year that we need to give thanks for. And I think especially that as we stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance, that we would think of our troops, those who are on the front line, especially those who are working in the healthcare field, COVID-related specifically, and just everyone who has given their time and efforts for this country, for our community, for our families, to keep some joy in our lives during this past year. So let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and give thanks. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our Vice Mayor, Mr. Merritt Matheson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Mayor Clark?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Matheson?
Here.
Commissioner Bruner?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald?
Here.
Commissioner Meyer?
Here.
Today we have a presentation, which is a certification. We have two certificates of appreciation in recognition of the Never Forget Garden in Memorial Park. And I'm not sure if Mr. Leggett, as our Public Works Director, wants to tell us how things happen in Memorial Park. And I know that we have Ms. Du Bois from the American Daughters of the American Revolution. And I know that Mr. Leggett is saying, why is she calling on me? But Memorial Park is such a great part of our Public Works Division. And when I do give these certificates, I'd like for Mr. Leggett to be there with me, because that's going to be a big thing to take care of these things and to be a part of them. So is this a young man here, Miss Du Bois, Mr. Dunshee? Oh, he's not here, and I know that you've given me a great history of what he's done. So before we even give out the certificates, can you come to us, Ms. Dunshee, from the Halpatioka chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and tell us how you conceived this idea and implemented it with your group and your team, and just how wonderful it is for Milton to be taking perpetual care of it.
Well, we hope to help out too. We decided to plant a garden in Veterans Memorial Park in honor of the 100th anniversary of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And last Thursday, we dedicated this garden. The white rose was a symbol of the Tomb of the Unknown. So there are white roses in the garden, plus there are other plants that are native plants that are white that are will not have to have quite as much care, but we will care for the roses. Ian Dunshee was a Life Scout, and he came together. We met with Milton, first of all, and chose the site, and then he, young man, was working on his Eagle Scout designation, so he brought together his troop of scouts, and they came and they cleared it off, and then they planted. He obtained some free plant materials and mulch and everything for it, and planted it, and as a result of that, he finalized his Eagle Scout designation.
Wonderful,
So,
wonderful.
we're very proud of him. He's a very nice young man, and we recognized him last week at our meeting. But the Daughters of the American Revolution is a patriotic organization, and we believe in historic preservation and also patriotism. And our chapter here in Stuart is 72 years old. It's one of the third largest chapter in the nation. And we're quite proud of that. We have 295 members, so. Thank you.
You've got company, Mr. Boy.
Ian.
There we go.
This is a young man who helped us plant the garden, and he did a very good job with his troop. We also, by selling white rose bushes to members and friends and all, we were able to obtain a plaque. We came out $28 to the good with our budget, so we put a plaque in the garden honoring the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Thank you.
And this young man was very instrumental in helping us do this.
Ian, you have exactly 60 minutes to speak to us.
Well, I did this entire garden as a project for my Eagle Scout project to obtain the rank of Eagle, which is somewhat of a great higher honor because it takes a lot of work and dedication to work through the ranks in order to obtain it. It took several months to finally culminate and put everything together for the garden, choosing what plants would be better for which part of the garden, and also working with the Stuart District of Parks, Milton, forget his last name.
So do I.
Milton Leggett.
Mr.
Leggett.
Milton should come on up
Leggett.
for a picture.
But finally, once we did find where the irrigation lines was, I was finally able to put together a landscape plan and finally construct the garden after going through many steps of approval with my troop and with the Daughters of American Revolution.
So could you tell us the name of your troop, your full name, and where do you go to school?
My name is Ian Andrew Dunshee. My troop name is 823, or troop unit number, and I attend South Fork High School as a senior.
Global Dogs.
Do you still meet at the United Methodist Church, or do you meet in Palm City then?
Yes, we do. We still meet at the First United Methodist Church on Kenner Highway.
I remember that from my days as everything, den mother, this, that. We
Everything.
had 833 in Stuart at the time, so, yeah. But we used to join together to go on stuff when we
Do
went.
join.
Klondike and different things, yeah. Wonderful. So this is your chance to ask us anything and to, first of all, we thank you. We thank you
Thank you.
for what
Thank you.
you've done.
Congratulations on
Scout,
Eagle.
right?
Thank you.
And Order of
Congratulations.
the Arrow, Eagle, all of those things are all wonderful things.
My Eagle Border Review is still out. Well, it was approved, so we're just waiting on the call back.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions for us?
Not necessarily.
Mr. McDonald wants to field a question from you, so you have to ask him something.
What would you say would be a better, well, not better project, but a more useful or more directly affected the community as in a project? Because I do have other younger scouts who are still trying to figure out projects and they need ideas or they need inspiration for
Great
something
question.
to do.
Good job. Mr. McDonald is still volunteering to answer.
I love park benches around town.
Benches, park benches?
Benches, and especially like the pocket parks. And along with the little lending libraries.
Gotcha.
No, we have to, we use
Decorate them, they can.
No, a very specific type of bench that we put in, raise the money, put the bench in, because we have a standard park bench that we use.
Okay.
But also then the lending libraries, those are great projects.
One of our other Eagle Scouts did do at the First United Methodist Church, did a book exchange box right out there next to the school that's attached to the church.
I see it every morning. I love it.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Mr. Mortel offered his house for a landscape project, if you're.
Mine too.
I'm okay with coconut balls.
Great
And
job.
do you guys have anything this is a young man who hopefully, whoever our congressperson is in the next few years, you'll be applying for some kind of scholarship or moving on somewhere. So do any of you, as a commissioners, have Any great words of wisdom for Mr. Dunshee? Mr. Meyer? you're
Well,
big
as a fellow bulldog,
Go Bulldog. This is, yeah, he's
I'll let you know you're going to go far. You're going to be
wonderful,
sitting up here one of these days.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And Mom, if you would, we're gonna come down and we're gonna get Mr. Leggett up here. I know you're taping, but we'd love to have a picture with you also. Mr. Kralski will take your picture. And if you guys want, Milton, could you please speak to Milton?
Milt, you're not getting out of this.
Do you want to do it together,
Thank you
separately?
so much. I hated missing it last week.
We're gonna get everyone in a row. Would you like to be in it?
Yes, here.
Okay.
Here's mine right there.
Yes, thank you. Don't worry. Perfect timing. Walked right.
My kids are bulldogs.
Okay, I got 3 different cameras up here. Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Great.
We're gonna ask the one with just them and Milton.
Well, I like these cameras better than mine. 1, 2, 3. One more. One. Ooh, someone's calling you. All right.
Answer it.
We're in a meeting. Great.
Can you have one with Ms. Milton? City Manager, could you please take a picture with TM posterity?
And Milton.
And Milton.
All right, everybody, big smiles. I'm done.
You're done. One and done.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, whose camera was this? Wait a minute. I can send it to her. I can send you. Okay, Donna, okay. I would also like to say, thank Mayor Clark for being at the dedication last week.
Yes.
It was really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
And thank you all for everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunshee. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is a presentation of the form-based code details of the contract that we've signed with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council for the Creek District and for the East Stuart area. And we'll get that going with Ms. Seymour, Ms. Jessica Seymour.
That's right. I have 52 slides, so I already gave Mayor Clark the permission to cut me off if I go too long. Again,
Have a nice
Jessica
night.
Seymour for Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. I know all of you know who I am. But for the record, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council is a public agency. We're one of 10 regional planning councils statewide, and our region runs from Indian River County to Palm Beach County. We're located here in Stuart, so it's very exciting to work in Stuart. We were asked by the CRA and by the city to look at the code, as Mayor Clark already mentioned, for East Stuart and for the Creek District. And why are we looking at the code is the first question, right? We want to ask the question, what's working, what's not working? The last major code revisions were in 2004, 2006. So since then, have the priorities and expectations changed? What code techniques have improved, like form-based code? And what can we learn from other places? The economic considerations to be baked in. So those are the questions that we're bringing forward and are in the front of our minds whenever we're updating a code. Another word of warning, a lot of people, when you hear me say urban, or us urban planners talk about urban, we are not talking about this, okay? Urban is this as well. So urban design is a multidisciplinary process. It's about the design of buildings and the streets and those landscapes and how those get pieced together. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that when I say urban and urban design, I don't mean skyscrapers. The goals for tonight, we're going to compare a conventional code with a form-based code. We're going to talk about why a form-based code may be a preferred code in many contexts and the tools that we use in a form-based code that make it different. A form-based code, this is the definition. A really important piece of this is it's about creating a predictable built results with a high quality public realm by using the physical form rather than the separation of uses as the organizing principle of the code. And all of that is to say we're trying to get closer and closer to a code that has predictability and placemaking at its core. In a form-based code, compared to a conventional code. So in a conventional code, it establishes your permitted uses, your setbacks, maximum density, prescribed heights, and provides parking standards. In a form-based code, it establishes permitted uses, setbacks, maximum density, permitted heights, and parking standards. I repeat that just so that it's clear that these are form-based code is still a set of land development regulations. It's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's actually just re-emphasizing different aspects of urban design and planning to get a more predictable result by focusing on the form of the building. So in conventional zoning, for example, all of those regulations that I just mentioned look inward to the site and keep the end user in mind. And the question still is out there, though, how well is that going to serve the city as a whole? We don't know if that product is going to serve the vision of the community as well. Whereas a form-based code, again, regulates inside the site, but it also has regulations to look at what does the context of that site, and therefore creating a more predictable result for the community. This right here, in a conventional code, you have a micromanagement or segregation of uses as the principal organizing feature. So this is a typical commercial corridor with a commercial storefront. In a form-based code, instead of focusing on providing the maximum amount of parking or segregating residential and commercial from one another, it's focused on getting the shapes and the form of the building and the street proper. And this is not something that we have to go very far to find examples of. So these are two buildings on Camden, one of which is my office, and you'll see the other one is an apartment building. And they're very similar in form, but they have different uses. They can adapt over time. The shape of the building is meeting the needs of the community, and the uses follow that. There's also, in a conventional zoning, they don't typically look at what the public realm looks like. So this is an example of South Miami, a street in South Miami. And you can see that beyond the site, there's been very little attention in these buildings to what the street is going to look like beyond providing a curb. In a form-based code, there's just as much attention given over to the public realm and how that is defined and articulated as the individual sites are. And this is something that can be achieved through city initiatives in some cases or private partnerships. There's lots of different mechanisms on how that happens. But it's always an organizing principle of how the code is written and at the forefront of the planning process. This aerial could be familiar. This is US 1 again. This is a site that we looked at in the master plan. And it's also an example of conventional code putting setbacks and parking standards at the forefront of the planning. And in that master plan, we studied what it could look like and what it could be developed to be if parking is addressed as a Park Once environment, where addressing the street is a priority, along with all those other development regulations. And we again You don't have to go very far to see what happens when we look at parking as a park once environment, and we looking at height by rational floors rather than arbitrary numbers. Osceola Street is a beautiful example of how you can visually see that these buildings are 3 stories, whether or not they're 40 feet tall, 45 feet tall, 35 feet tall. It's not something that the rational, most people absorb. What's important is the number of stories and how the street is fronting. I'm an architect by training, and my first exposure to form-based codes were actually as an architect. And I thought, wow, these are so groovy. I have pictures to look at, and I have charts that have my answers, and I don't have to read pages and pages of legal language to understand what it is I'm allowed to do. So many of us absorb information better through graphics and through charts. Form-based code puts attention into illustrating ideas that way, along with descriptions. So in short, a conventional zoning is a clear distinction of separate uses, and often, you've got the picky eater who doesn't want anything touching. Sometimes
That is so me.
and sometimes, as a city, all you get is a product that is the French fries, right? And you don't want just the French fries in your community. You want all the veggies and the good stuff all mixed together. So a form-based code is the hearty soup of land development regulations.
Thought that was a pizza.
Yeah.
Or a pizza,
We're
yes, it could be a
hungry, we're no
pizza.
second.
How does a form-based code promote better predictability and placemaking than a conventional code? Well, by providing directions, of course. These are tools that are often found in form-based codes. Some use all of them, some use a few. It all depends on what are the priorities of the community. The first tool and the real organizing principle behind the concept of form-based code and a return to traditional town planning is in this illustration here from DPZ. And you might be wondering, why am I showing a natural landscape? But what these city planners and architects realized is that there's an appropriate scale for trees, vegetation, plants working together in an environment, and then they applied that same concept to the urban form, the human form. So if if you follow along here, they identified this T1 area here, and it's natural. There's very few streets. These are the areas that we're trying to protect. Then you have the rural zone where it's, again, larger in scale, more farmland. The streets are sparse. Then you move further into the suburban zone, and then you see the introduction of sidewalks, rear-loaded lots, and then you move further into the general urban zone. Again, more connected sidewalks, more land devoted to building structures, and then that continues on to the urban center, to the urban core. This is Fort Lauderdale, this is West Palm, this is not in our DNA here, and then there are special districts. So again, the city of Stuart really falls within this framework here for context. But what's good to note in this is, everything has its proper place. The right size tree and the right size sidewalk for this context. The right size sidewalk and the right size building for this context. So again, this is the organizing principles and ideas behind looking at a form-based code. The other tool in the toolbox is the regulating plan. Now this is very similar to the zoning map that many of us are familiar with, but it has a few additional key features. This is an example from Jensen Beach. In Jensen Beach Boulevard is a really important commercial frontage street. So in this case, if you are coming in with new development, you have to have commercial frontage on Jensen Beach Boulevard. Now, that's not appropriate up here on Church Street, but it's really appropriate and necessary and expected for redevelopment here. Significant structures and history can be marked on a regulating plan. So again, in Jensen Beach, we have a historic church here that was really important, and it fronts a bunch of vacant land. We want to make sure that any developer, anybody involved in the community, any planner on staff knows the significance of this church in the context of the development. And then again, specific to Jensen Beach here, we have a lot of vacant parcels and a long-standing community expectation that there would be new streets that were introduced into this area. Now, the regulations allow for some movement of these new streets. It's not dictating specifically where they go, but any developer or future planning in Jensen Beach, this is documented, memorialized, so that that expectation doesn't go away with one individual leaving the planning department or changing over of staff over time. Building types. Building types are another tool in the toolbox. There's two examples here. This is the townhouse, and this is a cottage court. This is a list of commonly used building types in form-based codes. Note that the architectural style of these it's not the same, right? A building type is not architectural style because, you've got something very traditional here and very modern here, but they're both townhouses. Again, this is an example from a different community, but it gives you a sense of how the code is set up. You've got a description, an illustration, you've got charts, and you've got pictures. Frontage types. These are my favorite tools in the toolbox. So these are examples of frontage types that are located in the Martin County CRAs. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail as to why they're one of my favorite tools. To look at Osceola Street again, we have 630 feet of continuous building downtown. Yet it's a really enjoyable experience. No one complains that this building is so long, right? And it's not only is that long, it gets longer on the other side. And this dotted path is, the path that I follow every time I go downtown, and nearly everybody does, because you are enticed to keep walking. It's an enjoyable experience. And it's no question as to why. We have storefronts, which is one of the frontage types, lining almost every little individual stall here. Now, for context, Walmart in Stuart is also 630 feet of frontage. Now, Walmart can be Walmart, and that's okay, but you can understand I don't come out here and walk back and forth, and nobody else does either, because this is not the same kind of experience. So if we want to promote this experience places, we need to have regulations in place to promote that. And that comes into importance when we look at places in the Creek District here, right? Where there's some big lots here, some potential redevelopment over time. And the city has done a lovely job improving Johnson with shade trees, bike lanes, and wide sidewalks. But what's missing from this being my enjoyable walk through town or an activated street, and that's the frontage type or the building types up against the road, activating that street. Civic open space is an important tool, often used in form-based codes. Conventional zoning is usually, again, in separating uses, is focused on buffers and water percolation, which is important, but not always the best at regulating for civic open spaces. So again, a civic open space would be a greenway, a park, greens, squares, plazas, and playgrounds. The city of Stuart, already has a lot of wonderful amenities like this. When redevelopment happens, when new sites change uses, we want to make sure that those things are kept in the forefront. Thoroughfare types. So this is an example of how much detail can go into those streetscapes that I was mentioning. Form-based codes will talk about, and a lot of traditional town planning will talk about having 15-foot sidewalks, and you're like, what, 15-foot sidewalk, that's crazy. It's not crazy when you talk about detailing out what can happen there with street trees, the sidewalk, where those light poles go, the types of species of trees, the frontages that go into that setback. So this is the level of detail that can go into a frontage type and the thoroughfare types on the other side of that. This is an example from Dover Cole's office for Bradenton, Florida, where they went through and identified the different types of streets and an A-B network of streets, and what those would look like and what can look like. And I'm gonna sidebar a little bit into complete streets, because complete streets are another really important initiative that has put attention onto the thoroughfare. And again, you see Colorado, which was a complete street, and Osceola here that have really beautiful interventions in the street. Not only are they beautiful, but they also promote safe pedestrian access. They encourage biking, cycling, walking, and bolster economic activity. And I wanted to point out, in case any of you guys don't know, these examples right here, these are slides taken from FDOT's presentations on complete streets. So I wanted the city of Stuart and the staff here, Tim Volker and Milton, know that you guys are examples of good complete streets for the state, which I thought was a nice compliment. Special features to consider. So architectural design guidelines are not always part of a form-based code. They're often, they can be, and they can be as prescriptive or not as prescriptive as a community desires. So that's something to consider. Sustainability requirements can also be worked into the code, just like they could be worked into any zoning regulation, along with stormwater management. So those are pieces of the puzzle that fit in, but they don't necessarily define what organizes a form-based code. I'm gonna catch my breath. And then I'm gonna do one case study. This is Palm City, community that, and a neighborhood that I think most of us are familiar with. This is a picture of Map Road from 2019. We did, they've had a form-based code for some years now, and there started to be some buildings that came up to the front. And then in the last year, they've completed a Complete the Street project there. And we did a code update for them that was adopted in May of 2021. In it was included a regulating plan. Again, we called out our special civic building here, right, at Layton Park. The Ripple project, which is a series of art and stormwater installation projects. They're public parks. They also include public art and stormwater infrastructure that was very much so needed in the community. And then if you also notice the color gradation here, these different colors all indicate the different sub-districts, which are like zoning districts. But the colors also try to still tell the story of what's happening. So the darker the color, the higher the intensity or the impact of the uses in the building types. And the lighter the color, you know, that's the predominantly single-family detached neighborhoods. And that informs our street network. This is a street regulating plan. And that red line is the primary street. Again, using the street thoroughfare and the building types and the frontage types, you know, this is a regulation in Old Palm City that if you're building a building on those streets, your front door needs to face the street. Sounds pretty primary and sounds obvious, but it needs to be said sometimes. So we go ahead and say it so that later on down the line, there's not any confusion about what way your building should be facing. And then the secondary street network in Old Palm City was a little different than how it's used in some communities. Usually, or often there's an A and B street network, but what the secondary street network here means is these are really important access points to the school, to public parks. They're also the through streets in the community. And so we wanted to make sure that these were a priority when CRAs were looking to do more work in the community, and again, documenting, where pedestrian sidewalks are more important, and future infrastructure projects for the community. We list out the permitted uses, the development standards. Again, the names of the districts tell you a little bit about what's inside. We talk about core. Core is the downtown. Detached, meaning it's predominantly detached single-family homes. And I know the font is really small here, but we provided the regulations for height, density. There's a common misconception out there that a form-based code requires high density and mixed use everywhere. It's not true. Whether or not it's high density or mixed use depends on the community's vision. So it does not necessarily mean that there's a mixed use aspect in every parcel of every development when you do a form-based code. So just put anybody who has some concerns about that, that's not what necessarily happens. Again, open space. The building placement here is regulated by your building types. And then here is the list of the permitted building types by district. This is an example of the illustration of the building types in Old Palm City. This is the townhouse, and that's permitted in the core, corridor, and the industrial, multifamily, and detached. Frontage types, again, just to repeat myself a little bit more, an illustration, a picture, a description, and a chart. And it's really important that we get these dimensions right, because the frontage types should be functional parts of the community's infrastructure. They're extensions of the public realm. So the arcade is my favorite example, because too often you see arcades that you can't walk in, and they don't do anything for activating the street or providing the shade that they do when you can actually occupy them. This is Map Road in 2019, like I said. This is what it looks like now. And you can see the buildings that have come up to the street since that redevelopment of the Complete Street project. Look at home, and they're addressing the side of the street much better, the on-street parking. This is, again, a reminder of what it looked like before. You had storm water in the front. Since they've done this project, we've had all this rain, and they've done such a phenomenal job, the engineering at the county, and in this project, they're handling the stormwater just beautifully. I wanted to highlight this building and this parking lot, because it has not redeveloped, but its function has totally changed. So this is the same parking lot, and they just quickly adapted to this new street by putting their chairs out here, put out their ice cream A-frame shop here, and now it is an activated Main Street. It's happening already, even before the buildings have changed. You see people here. I love seeing the kids riding their bikes here. It's just really exciting to see it happening. Again, that was the parking lot, and it's now filled with activity and people meeting their neighbors. A nice feature that was included on this street, again, to talk about complete streets, not just being about beautification. It's hard to see in the pictures, but these lines right here, this whole intersection is curbless. So as you approach the intersection, there's a little bit of deflection to help slow down traffic, and it's making it safer for these cyclists. This was taken at like 7:30 in the morning, and there were 2 cyclists out, which I just thought was fantastic. And enough about Palm City. Now we're going to talk, this is the study area that we're looking at. Again, the Creek District and East Stuart. We want to look at the Creek District since the code was adopted here. There's now an arts and entertainment district, so we're asking that question. How can the code realign with the vision for the Creek District? And then East Stewart, that vision plan was developed in 2002, and it's time we update that. So where we are in our process, we kicked off on October 20th. We're conducting interviews right now. Our East Stewart Vision Update Workshop is coming up on December 9th. I'm here today doing this presentation, and I'll be back at the CRB doing a similar presentation. We've got a walking tour on January 22nd for both districts. Oops. And then from that point, we'll be developing the code. We'll come back in May or June with a work in progress presentation with any recommendations. And then hopefully at that point, we'll then transition into presentations for adoption of any of those recommendations. So thank you for listening to me go through those many items.
Thank you so much, Ms. Seymour. And so your project, your total form-based code project coming to us and doing the public hearings will be completed by when? Just for the public to know that.
September
Of 2022.
2022, exactly.
Okay. And all the notices will go out and there'll be ample locations and
Absolutely.
methods for people to give input.
Absolutely. So a lot of our input session is heavy on the front end where we want to get we're going to ask all these questions that those first two slides that we had about what's the vision, where are there places that we need to make adjustments to the land development regulations to make sure that we're aligned with where each community wants to go. So those December 9th meeting and the workshop, and the January 22nd workshop are really important as well. From then, when we go to May and June, those will be additional presentations with the actual recommendations. And then as part of adoption of any of those recommendations, there will be at least 5 public meetings with that as well. So you'll be tired of me by the end of this, for sure.
Never.
Thank you. This is a presentation, but I'm sure that our commission may have questions, or Ms.
I have a quick,
Savdas, do you have anything? Oh, city manager, I need to go to city manager.
I just have a quick question. The December 9th, what time is that
I would like, 5:30, yes.
at the 10th Street Center? or-
Yes, it is, thank you. And we
December
are,
9th at the 10th Street Center.
Yes.
And I want to say this later, but it is kind of important because communication is the key, but I must tell you that Ms. Gandhi Savdas is probably going to get the Pulitzer Prize for getting out there and getting those door hangers out and all those things. So we expect to see good communication during this process and to get people involved. So December 9th is still somewhat early in the season, but anything right now is always busy time, but we hope to get people involved on December 9th, 5:30. So it is a little bit before it gets dark, so it's not so overwhelming, and we hope that people will come in to that, and we'll go through. Commissioners, would you have any questions on this presentation?
I don't.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner McDonald?
I just said I don't.
Oh, you said you don't, okay. That's a good sign. Okay, no questions on the presentation? Mr.
Exciting stuff.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you and to getting some input from the public. And of course, we have your other half of the triangle that we're still working on getting implementation. So again, Ms. Gandhi Savdas has her hands full trying to get all these things together for our community. Thank you so very much.
Be safe on your bicycle home.
it should be safe in front of City Hall, right?
Should be. If there's any place, it should be safe.
All right, no questions? So thank you so very much, and thank you, Ms. Gandhi Savdas, for allowing this presentation to come to us in this manner. Thank you very much. Comments by city commissioners. Commissioner Bruner?
I don't have any. I just wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and they get to be with their families.
Thank you, Commissioner Mc, oh,
Cool weather. I just walked outside before this meeting and it's just beautiful, cool. Thank you.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. It's, I always like to reflect this time of year and think about everything I'm thankful for, and I am so blessed to be thankful for so many things, so that's, and I hope everybody else as well, and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And attended the ribbon cutting and grand opening of the CBP, Customs Border Protection's Air and Marine Unit that's based here in Stuart, and that was quite an operation, and it's going to be really nice having that additional layer of law enforcement based right here out of Stuart. Their mission is pretty intense, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do here and helping keeping our country safe. They're part of the National Department of Homeland Security, so.
But it is named Fort Pierce, but we're gonna be working on that. Okay. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving coming up. I'm thankful to serve alongside you all and on behalf of the community. And I know we're in a moment where we're growing and, you know, not everyone agrees with us or me all the time, but I really do appreciate serving with you all. And I think we do a pretty darn good job doing the best we can and working with the challenges that we have. I just wanted to, I didn't have a question for Ms. Seymour, but I was so glad that we had that presentation on form-based code and how we think about how we can regulate the built environment in our city before we have this development discussion later on today. Some of her points around conventional zoning, really only looking inward and trying to create discrete uses on different parcels and making sure that they're compatible or not compatible just by zoning and just by the use of those parcels is missing so much. It's missing so much of what people ask of us all the time, which is how do we build the city we want to see, the city we all love, and improve upon that city. And tools like form-based code, I think, really allow us to finally do that. Because I know people sometimes roll their eyes when we say we don't have a whole lot of power here. It's more than just saying yes and no to individual projects. Having something like this, even though we're only looking at it right now for the creek and for East Stuart, provides developers with a palette for what's possible, so that we don't have to try to cobble together something on the floor here when projects come to us. So I think it's just a great primer for our discussion later on. I also wanted to mention, I'm sure you all have noticed too, Osprey Preserve planting is well underway. I think so far they've done a pretty good job. It appears to me as of yesterday, I go by there all the time, yesterday most of the, if not all of the planting along Green River Parkway has been done. The buffer it looks very good. The trees are nice and big. Of course, it's terrible that that it was cleared in the first place, but again, we're trying to make sure things get replanted. There's still some big holes in the frontage along Jensen Beach Boulevard, but they are coming in nicely, and they're still, I think, up to December 7th, I want to say, or 17th,
I think.
17th is when they have it on there. So, I'm talking with staff. Let's all keep an eye on it. We have, we're holding them accountable to that plan, but hopefully they'll get it done like they said they would. So I'm happy to see that moving along. And that's all I have.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Last Thursday, I got the honor of serving well over 100 free Thanksgiving dinners at Gertrude Walden. And I just wanted to thank again Thelma Washington for leading that effort. And I know all of her team of volunteers over there, do an excellent job feeding all those in need who could use a free Thanksgiving meal, those that may not have the means to have the wonderful meal that a lot of us are maybe looking forward to. And also thank our community relations department of our officers there, Captain Ortato, Tammy, Rachel, and of course Chief Tuminelli was there as well, helping out. And, you know, it makes you reflect and think sometimes how fortunate we may be. I attended the Customs and Border Patrol with Commissioner McDonald, as he said, and also about a week and a half ago, I met with one of the Brightline representatives, and you know, I know what we may all know and what Chief Dias debriefed us on, that Brightline is coming roughly the first quarter of 2023, and they intend to operate with the existing rail bridge. Shockingly, a lot of the agents at our new Customs and Border Protection facility didn't seem to be fully aware of that. And when I asked them, one, if their boat could go under the existing Roosevelt Bridge when it's down, they said yes, which is good news. I didn't even bother to ask them if they could go under the train bridge which is down. We talked about that and knew the answer. They can't. And when I filled them in that train bridge will be down roughly 45 minutes of every hour, they were a bit taken aback. And the gentleman charged offered, you know, to me, whatever help we could get, or he could give, anything in writing in pursuit of, you know, getting a new train bridge. And when I met with the Brightline reps, I expressed that the goal I think they need to try and hit in designing a new bridge is to make a goal at least as high, if not higher, than our existing old Roosevelt Bridge when it's down. You know, that's a mark that many boaters already know, that'll spread throughout the community, and, you know, those that can't get under the existing Roosevelt Drawbridge are already used to having to wait. But having a Customs and Border Patrol facility, you know, on one side of the bridge, being limited access, you know, to their entire territory, is just elevates the concern that this is a safety issue. And, you know, my thoughts are that the city of Stuart draft a letter and stressing our concern of that safety issue. Because at that opening, I'm sure Commissioner McDonald saw, was representatives from Congressman Mass' office, Senator Scott, and Senator Rubio. And they all actually, besides the representative from Mass' office, seemed a little surprised and didn't seem to know about the timing of Brightline and the bridge closure. And basically at this point, for City of Stuart, we need to do whatever we can to try and get a new bridge built as fast as possible, because I see it as a major safety issue. So on that note, if you guys agree with me, I'd like us to draft a letter stressing Stuart's concern for the multiple safety issues regarding Brightline's planned operation of the existing limited clearance rail bridge over the St. Lucie River. I'd like that letter to highlight the fact that the brand-new base of the Fort Pierce Marine Unit will have limited access to its service area when the rail bridge is down.
Wouldn't they want to go on the other side?
Who's the letter?
I mean, why would they?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Who's the letter?
What?
Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
Well, no, what do you mean? I mean, their boat is going to be stationed in Fraser Creek on a lift. So if they want to leave their boat lift, you know, in any rapid manner,
They can't if the bridge is down.
the bridge might be down. What we're looking at in first quarter of 2023 is that bridge, by the lawsuit settled with Martin County, only has to be open for 15 minutes of every hour. So they were fairly concerned of learning this information. You know, I don't think they plan to stage the boat on the other side of, and just be holding it there.
Vice Mayor, who's the letter to?
I'm getting to that point. Sorry, I digressed a little bit. But the letter would be to Senator Rubio, Scott, Congressman Mast, and Governor DeSantis.
What I would what I would suggest is, I like the idea, I've spent a lot of time working on the Bright Line for years, is to have staff work on a letter and bring it back to us next meeting, because I think this is I'd like to see a final draft before we approve anything. So I would think that if direct staff to work on a letter and maybe work with our,
Well,
as far as working with our lobbyists to make sure we get all the language right.
Once they bring back the letter that we have next meeting, before sending it, I'd like us to go back and reach out to the Customs and Border Patrol facility and see if we can get letters of support from that agency prior to sending it. And I'd be happy with a letter in hand to go there, or we could have our staff do it. They expressed to me that they want to support this mission, in any way possible, and they see the big safety concern as well. And if we wanted to take it a step further, to me, that's a must, that we have to have a letter of support from the federal agencies.
Yeah.
But if we wanted to take it a step further, we could then broaden our reach at that point and decide if we want to go to the Marine Industries Association and, other areas that have stake in this around town before sending that letter.
I will just say that if we're going to do a letter from the CBP and wait on that, it might not be back for this next meeting, because they're not going to just write that at this local level. That's got to go up the chain. They're not just going to write that letter and it's going to get political.
For me, I don't see, I see the more of the urgency of the letter getting done. I don't see a timing issue. This letter's not going to alter the timing of Brightline's plan. They've already gotten approval. But I think getting a letter, with the CBP would be very helpful if we're sending it to both our senators and the governor.
If I can just chime in, so when I'm reviewing it, I just want to be clear. Is the city just supporting Brightline's actions, or is the city saying that it thinks the federal government should actually do something? Or is it?
Are we asking them to build a new bridge?
Yeah, that's why I want to see the letter or to read.
Yeah, no.
In order to draft it, I want to make sure that.
We just urge that all that can possibly be done to facilitate or require Brightline to construct a new rail bridge with clearance at least as high as our existing Roosevelt Bridge. And the thought behind the letter would be that we would bring this before sending it to anyone upon our approval to the Customs and Border Patrol facility to see if they would back this effort.
That might take months to get that. I would just get a letter, and if we come up with a letter that we want to send, and get it sent out, and just reference the fact that we have the Customs and Border Patrol protection here, or in the letter, as another reason why, because by the time it goes up through the chain, it might be 4 months before.
Well, let's get the letter drafted and see, because he told me at the opening that he'd be willing to put anything on letterhead himself in writing to support this. So if it does take months, then we might want to send the letter anyway.
Yeah.
But we might as well go and talk to them and see
agree,
their thoughts.
But I just want to make sure we have the plan, because it's, once they start bringing it up the chain, then it's going to get political, and they're going to find out the congressmen and the senators' take on this, and they're not going to do anything that they're going to be very cautious on.
They don't want to
that.
jeopardize their own.
Right, they're not, what they say, they said to us at a function where they're all happy and cutting a ribbon versus what gets
What's
put on
gonna
paper
happen?
are two different things.
I know, but I also know that they're the guys working there that are going to be held up because of the bridge.
Right.
And our mission is to get a new bridge built with higher clearance,
Oh, no,
whatever way
I'm not
possible. We
disagreeing.
need
I
all
want a new
support we
bridge.
can get for it.
Absolutely, but I think I think that just from a perspective of, let's be ready to go without a letter from them and just reference
Yep.
them.
Well, we can have the letter drafted and discuss it 2 meetings from now, once we have a shot at bringing it to them and seeing their thoughts.
I like that. I think, I wasn't there and had those conversations, but, I think we should leverage
Exactly.
CBP's own anxiety around not wanting, having the safety issue of the bridge, rather than us getting in and saying, we're requiring you to, I'd rather.
No.
Yeah, let's.
I want to leverage that facility's location.
Yeah.
On the opposite side of the bridge of the majority of the service area they serve, and them sharing the same safety issues that I know we all share as a commission. That's the intent of the letter, and the goal would be to send it, to all our federal representatives, as well as, most likely, in my mind, Governor DeSantis.
I'm behind that. I'll
Is
second
there
that.
consensus as to what we're asking staff, or do we need to have a vote and a motion?
I think there's consensus.
Well,
I under- go ahead.
there has to be a vote to agree to have the mayor sign a letter.
No, but we want
so
to
it's-
coming
come
back.
back and then.
Okay.
And the letter, that this would be drafted,
We'll bring the draft letter back to you for approval.
yes.
Any other comments, Vice Mayor?
That is all, except for everyone, please have a happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you, and I'll start my comments with the same, happy Thanksgiving, and thanks again to Ms. Washington and her team and all the community members who came out for that. And sometimes there's so many wonderful things that our community members do, and I know that it would seem like we're giving awards and commendations to people time after time and year after year, but sometimes we never do anything and we never recognize them. So I don't know, I know that we're gonna have a thing where we recognize our advisory committee members for the city, but sometimes we've had COVID and everything, but it would be nice when we have really community groups, whether it's those who help work with the homeless and other groups that really get out there, the Stuart Main Street, other people who get out there and really make our community shine. And we probably just need to find a way to thank them and to let them know that we appreciate all the things that they do. Our Rivers Coalitions that meets here all the time, people are just working hard in all these different agencies and groups. So we really just appreciate them, and I don't know how we can do that. Maybe every quarter we can pick 3 or 4 groups and just send them a letter and tell them thanks, because they really do a lot to let our city shine. With that regard, I must say that I personally want to thank Ms., I'm going to say it wrong again, Gandhi Savdas and her team and all of our team at the City of Stuart for helping me as the mayor who had asked for a town hall meeting on November 16th to get this meeting going and to have I think I've heard from people that it was successful, and I think as the mayor assessing and being in charge of the meeting and getting the input, and I know that people went up and talked to staff afterwards. I just want to thank our city manager for his leadership, Mr. Kralski and his team at the 10th Street. I don't know, I'm just going to ask everybody to just give the 10th Street Recreation Center just a round of applause for everything that Mr. Redstone and all his people do there. And of course, Mr. Freeman and everybody else just goes without saying that there's just so many things that our staff pull together and really make teamwork. And I know that the people, especially in East Stuart, they're looking. They're going to be very interested on the 9th when the form-based code hearing is there. I'm hoping that we'll still continue to have good input, and we'll continue to let this neighborhood really get their expressions out with regard to keeping the neighborhood strong and keeping the identity of the neighborhood strong, and getting redevelopment in there, as well as our beautification project that we are working on. So whatever we can do, city manager, to keep the communication going and to make sure that things happen, I really appreciate that. Mr. Mortel and Mr. Freeman, I know this has probably been going around for some time. It's this letter from the DEO about, I think it's about the requirement that we had to adopt into our comprehensive plan, and that's, yes, yeah.
No, I believe that one, is that the approval, the final approval notice? Mr. Mortel responded to you on that.
That's I think the mayor is actually looking at a second DEO
It's the
letter
second one then, okay.
that came that wasn't on the property rights. I think it was on another matter. I emailed you back on
It was on the
Friday.
annexation.
Okay,
It's on the
it was on the
annexation.
annexation.
It was the
Okay, 'cause I've had
conservation
so many of
annexation.
them, and they just listed order, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're on our way with that, so.
Yep, that's
and-
finalized,
And
or
we're
it'll
responding with that.
be
Thank you
finalized.
so much. I'm so glad that Commissioner Bruner did not have anything to say, because I wanted to do something that she's done several times. And this is just a little article from the paper. It was an opinion in the paper. And it talks about Ernie Lyons and how we became the sailfish capital, and about this concurrence that happened in 1938 when the fish was running so high. And then Ernie Lyons is a writer for, and then the skippers for the ship, the boats, when they were so excited about that, and Ernie is like, well, this is it. Somebody said, this must be the sailfish capital of the world, and he took that and went with it, and that's how we have our little Stuart being called the sailfish cap. Becky comes in with all these little newspaper articles all the time, and when she didn't say anything, I said, thank you, thank you. So I get a chance to bring up a newspaper article. So this was actually a article in today's newspaper by Ed Killer, and it says, Bill Fish be there. And it's just a little article, and it just mentions our sailfish capital of the world and how that came about with Ernie Lyons. And it says, it was a Miami Herald article at the time, you may as well call that place, Stuart, the sailfish capital of the world. A Miami Herald writer penned in his column. And Ernie Lyons jumped on that, and that's how we had our name. So anybody wants to read it, that's a good thing. And thank you for bringing your little tidbits, Ms. Bruner. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Also, I wanted to just say that, you know, there's so many things that have happened during this past year, and we really just want to be, again, so thankful, so grateful for all the things that have happened. And one of the things that have happened was that I had asked, and the commission agreed, to have the first ever celebration of our state of Florida acknowledgement of the emancipation time in Florida, not just the last time that we had slaves in the United States, but when it was announced in Tallahassee on May the 20th, 1865. And at that time, we had a celebration earlier on this spring, probably one of our first little outdoor celebrations, even though we were still in COVID. Everybody went along, and I really appreciate the input and participation. And I did give out plaques, but then some people weren't available, and I held them, and then I decided to make some of them laminated because I was holding on them for so long, and I'm still holding on to them. So I'm gonna ask if, I don't know, I think we might have a little heavy meeting, but I don't want to do too much. All I want to do, if I could ask these people to come out on the 13th, and all I would do is just call their names and give them their plaque and maybe have a picture. If the commission and our clerk would allow that on our calendar, I would appreciate that for the 13th, and it will not take up too much time for our meeting on the 13th.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Okay, I know that it's kind of late in the game, but I'm just praying that it will work out and we'll have some people who are still around. I appreciate that. I think that is it for my comments. And city manager.
All right, it's time for my hour.
Yeah, I know. That was given to the Eagle Scout, 60 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, a few announcements, and I'll have Ms. Pickett put this on all of your calendars. This Friday is the tree lighting. The event starts at 4, but I believe the lighting's gonna be at 6, but we will confirm that and make sure you know. That's this Friday. This coming Friday is the 26th. December 7th is the water supply groundbreaking event over at the water treatment plant on 10th Street. That's at 1 o'clock. December 3rd is the Christmas parade, of course. December 10th is Santa's City Lights. That's the Realtors Association, the Christmas tree lights in Memorial Park. And then December 18th is Miracle on 10th Street over in East Stuart, where the soccer field area is at. But again, I'll have Ms. Pickett put that on all of your calendars, city calendars, so that you have that information. Wanted to let you know that we are currently exploring other software avenues to include our agenda software that we use. We've been having some issues with that, as well as the city's ERP citywide software that does all of our finance, our budgeting, our customer service, all of that stuff. We've had a horrible time with an upgrade process with our current vendor we've had for years and years and years. And when Jolie, who loves the company because was like I am and knows how to like do little tweaks and twerks of all this software, says we have to leave it, there's a serious issue there. So we've been evaluating other software companies to move to so that we can provide the best customer service that we can to our community. You may have read in the newspaper an article about the new Roosevelt Bridge. I know some of you had phone calls on that, and as well as I did from the news article writer. And from my interactions and conversations with FDOT, they are doing a lot of mitigation work on the bridge to lessen as much corrosiveness as possible and to stop or slow down the process. There's also a very hard-to-find monitoring system that's now in place on the inside of the bridge to monitor that corrosion and any activity that's going on inside the bridge. And I just have to have every confidence that the FDOT engineers know what they're doing and know how to move forward with this, with the particular issue on corrosion. I wanted to talk to the commission and get your feedback on continuing our Zoom at every meeting. We very rarely have people on the Zoom, and at our other boards, not the commission board, the other boards, there's like never anybody on them. And our video feed that we have is much higher definition than the Zoom is, and so I just wanted to get your feedback on continuing or stopping the usage of Zoom.
I'm ready to move on.
I agree, stopping.
Anyone else have any comments on it?
Is it just because of video feed?
No, it's just because there's no participation.
Because, because the
We already-
COVID was convenient.
Yeah.
I mean, it is one more way for the public to get involved.
That's true.
You know, I do like that it provides the ability for some people who can't be here physically to participate. You know, it's, I mean, does it
Does
Is it
cost us a
expensive?
lot?
Is it a cost or is it a
I mean,
time?
there's a cost, but it's nominal. I mean,
Oh, okay.
it's our city account, so it's a nominal deal.
I just feel like, you know,
I think it's a good thing.
I feel like it would be a step backward to pull it. I know we did it for COVID, but, you know, we're all sort of moving more in this direction of being more open and accessible, more transparent, more technology oriented. And, you know, I know that, you know, look who we've got here. We've got our people who are here every time. And I do like that people are have an option to come in and or at least watch and then provide input if they need to, and they don't have to physically be here. So I don't know.
I don't see too much of a detriment if the cost is nominal to having it at least until we move well past COVID. And I say that knocking on wood, but, you know, I equate where we are now to where we were last June or July. And then a spike happened, and,
Yeah.
and, you know, a lot of boards that I participate in are still at times virtual.
Yeah.
You know, so if there's not a major cost, I don't see the detriment in
Okay,
offering.
I just ask that you not complain when the person goes to give public comment and you don't hear them or there's static in between or whatever. That's not something we can control.
I never have.
And I'm thinking of Commissioner Meyer, what he said, because maybe it might even be a good thing to let people know so that there's more avenues for them to comment. Of course, we don't want to spend all night with everybody calling in from all over the world, but at the same time, it is another way for people to communicate with us, and maybe they should know. Maybe people don't even know that we're available by Zoom, although unless they go to the agenda item and see it. I think we're saying until, well, we're way past COVID, but that doesn't mean anything. COVID is going to be with us like the common cold is with us at some point in time. Should we say until next year or June or July or something, 6 more months, or is there a time frame, or
Why don't we reevaluate
every 6 months?
time the city manager brings it up?
I think that's a good plan. I'm happy to keep it going. I think ultimately, I think we're all only going to continue moving more in that direction. At least I think that more accessibility is always better.
Can I stay home and?
That's why we get paid the big bucks,
I
Becky.
would really love that.
Actually, Mr. Mortel, can you explain to us
Governor DeSantis.
that reasoning? Because I know that during the emergency, some boards could do that, but
So-
can you just explain that to us, please?
You guys set the policy.
She was kidding.
The
I know.
reality is that historically, the city commission, in its charter, had a charter review every 10 years, and the board has brought up the issue of allowing appearance by both phone and/or video. In the past, it was by phone, and the Charter Advisory Committee advised against it and said they wanted the commissioners in person. This year, the Charter Advisory Committee, or last year, the Charter Advisory Committee again brought up the issue of attendance at meetings by digital means or remote meetings. And again, the Charter Advisory Committee, which is public residents, recommended against it and said they didn't want the commission to alter it to allow for it. And the commission, again, took it up and chose to have a charter restriction that mandates the commissioners be present so that if a member of our community wants to come and address the commission, they know where to find you.
Sorry, Becky.
All right, thank you. Is that it, City Manager?
Lastly, I'd like to ask Mr. Mortel just to give you a quick update on what occurred with the Doha hearing.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Well,
you.
the first hearing was 14 hours, so I figured 10% of that time.
Yeah.
Actually, the Doha hearing is Department of Administrative offices, or it was an administrative hearing regarding the city's future land use amendment. The challenge was that the city did not have the professionally acceptable data and failed to analyze the data and react appropriately. It is a difficult burden for the petitioner to overcome. The hearing lasted, it was scheduled for 3 days. It ended up lasting 2 full days. Myself and the other attorneys were able to stipulate to some facts that cut some time out of the hearing. Presentation went well. At the end of the presentation, the administrative judge ordered that the court reporter provide a transcript of the proceedings. Upon the provision of once the transcript is provided, both sides, that is myself and the other lawyers, have 15 days from that date to file our proposed final judgments. That is what we believe the judge's ruling should reflect. And then within approximately 30 days from that date, the judge has stated that she will enter her ruling. The court reporter asked the judge if she could have until after the holidays to provide the transcript. The answer was yes. That's an open end. I mean, is after the holidays, after Thanksgiving? Is it after Christmas? Is it after New Year's? Does it include Valentine's Day?
My birthday's January.
Merritt's birthday is the holidays. And again, I know the court reporter, she's a very professional court reporter, and she has always been very timely. So I'm sure she'll get it done as soon as she can. And then as soon as we submit our proposed orders and then the judge submits her order, there's an additional 15 days that anybody that wants to file a challenge or a question as to the findings of fact by the administrative judge to clarify the order can file that. And then, after that 15 days expires, it would be submitted for final entry by the Department of Economic Opportunity, at which time it would then become a final order. Honestly, you know, in the last week, a lot of people have asked me what that means. And my take on it is that just after the holidays, I just picked January 5th. let's say we get the transcript on or about January 5th, 15 days from that is January 20th, 30 days from that is February 20th, 15 days from that is March 5th. My guess is ruling will be sometime in March. Now, for what it's worth, if tomorrow I walk into the office and the court reporter has emailed over the transcripts, 15 days starts tomorrow. I doubt that's gonna happen, but that's, it's a moving target.
Thank you.
Who pays for the transcript? We do, or?
Half and half.
We're splitting it equally.
Thank you.
It's quite a long transcript.
Well, actually, the transcript is not the transcript of the 14-hour hearing. The transcript that she's talking about is the transcript from the 2 days of the testimony of the witnesses, so when
I
she's
see.
doing her order. But, for what it's worth, one of the exhibits entered into the hearing itself that's already been uploaded to the judge is the 2 different transcripts of the 2 different hearings, which Commissioner Meyer is absolutely correct, is very long reading. They're thick and long, because the 7 hours of straight testimony was a long time.
And very expensive.
Yeah.
So 15 days from transcript, do you have all of the resources you need?
Yeah,
for
I
your-
do, and I've already started kind of drafting it, because I didn't want to wait until get the transcript to start putting it together, because I remember everything and I'm fresh right now. My thought is get it kind of together, and then when the transcript comes in, use the transcript to supplement it and do footnotes and reference the portions of the testimony. And, for what it's worth, there's no magic here. I'm sure the other side's doing it too. Before the hearing, I actually read every single ruling this judge had entered in a future land use amendment case. And I have several of her rulings in my office, so my proposed order is obviously going to follow her pattern of prior orders.
Thank you, thank you. City Manager,
I'd like to ask.
That's all, ma'am.
speaking of development,
That's all.
that's it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so, let's move on to the, approval of the agenda as published, or if
moved.
anything needs to be added. Moved by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner, McDonald. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda has been approved unanimously. At this time, we'll have public comments, 3 minutes, and maybe it's a record, but I don't have a green, it's not a record.
Oh.
Well, Mr. Shaw asked me here. Yes, Mayor.
Making up for lost time.
No, was having the Eagle Scout here tonight, and I'm the proud property owner. We've had 2 projects in my neighborhood by Eagle Scout, at the end of 10th Street and at the end of 7th Street.
Yes.
Both pieces of property were owned by the city of Stuart. It's dead-end roads, or paper streets, as they used to call them back when. And I think it would be great, like the young scout asked you, maybe if the city,
And the
my
fourth-
best friend, Mr. Leggett, could help them. There has to be other dead-end streets that we could have parks, because I can tell you, the park on 7th and 10th is well-used, because it's a cut-through to get to the library, the stores and that, and for mothers, bicycles. You see a lot of bikes, and then they cut through on 10th, even the runners use it, So it's just my suggestion, for the next time you get an Eagle Scout, think of, donating,
14th
or
Street.
Mr. Leggett, if they went to him, he could figure out, well, yeah, we got this street, here or that. And I also want to say, I will say this, our city attorney, Mike Martell, and Kevin Freeman did excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. I was very proud
you.
of both of them as a taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gee, Mike, you got that compliment out of her after all.
I paid her for that, but
Thank you, thank you.
I didn't know
much
she was
did
going to
that
include Kevin. He has to split it with me now.
You have served yourself well, Ms. McBride. Are there any, this is the time for public comments. Are there any other public comments? Mr. Paul, do we have any public comments on the? No, ma'am. On the Zoom? Thank you so much.
Can we ask how many do we have watching the Zoom?
X
Yes.
3, which I will say is an all-time high for the last several.
See?
Okay.
Thank you. Those who are watching on Zoom, get 10 other people to Zoom in so that we can, I'm sorry. Okay, so we have the consent agenda, which is the approval of the meetings from November the 8th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner McDonald. Do we need all in favor, or you need a voice vote?
All in favor is fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The consent calendar, including the minutes from November 8th, 2021, has been approved unanimously by voice vote. We have no other items on the consent agenda. We have no ordinances for second reading. I think we have 2 ordinances for first reading. Attorney Mortel, ordinance number 2477-2021.
Ordinance 2477-2021, an ordinance of the City of Stuart, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 40, Article 2, Section 40 to 43, providing for a revision/amendment to the 3-hour downtown parking district, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you so much. City Manager, or,
I've taken a new role.
yeah, I know.
I just wanted to come bring my email up so I could bring the visual up as to the area that we're talking about for adding to the 3-hour parking district. All of the parking spaces from that red line on Flagler back to St. Lucie would still remain open parking with no limitations on time. This particular area was contemplated when we were having the lease discussions with Hudson's, and the parking spaces there are still open to the public and open to use. It just turns over the spaces quicker.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I think this is a good idea, David, and two things. One directly relates to this, and one that doesn't. I just want to bring it up in this discussion for maybe a future discussion, but is we should once we approve this, we should make sure we give notice over to the Sailors Return, because I believe a lot of their employees park over there and walk underneath the bridge, and so that they know that they don't all of a sudden get surprised with a ticket when they come home, when they come out of work one day. So, and maybe do warnings for the first month.
Bob's going to yell at me.
What's that?
Bob's going to yell at me.
Okay, so give me something new.
Yeah, right.
Second thing is, and I've spoken with David about this several times, and this is not directly related to this, but maybe we can look at it here or bring it back. I've got a couple of people have mentioned to me, one in particular person. We used to have a rule in the downtown on Osceola Street regarding parking that the large trucks could only park on one side of the street. And when we redid the road in 2018, it adjusted the dimensions a little bit, but the road is still the same width. And what happens is if you get 2 big pickup trucks parked relatively close to each other, it's really hard to get down the street. And if it's possible to add it to this ordinance to put the trucks back on one side of the street, that'd be great. If not, I'd like to bring it back for another.
Previously, it wasn't part of an ordinance, it was a policy decision, and it was just changed when they approved the streetscape change in downtown.
How was it
communicate
spread throughout the, if you
It
were a
was just on
visitor
the
driving a
Osceola,
large?
because it was just on this one section of Osceola between St. Lucie and Haney Circle, because that's where
Oh, yeah.
Was there a sign?
Or was it
It was
conveyed on a
There used
sign?
to be signs there that said that, and I don't remember what, I bet Milton still has them.
Yeah, under his pillow.
Under his pillow.
He used to have, and he used to say basically, truck
I
parking.
remember, yeah.
Yeah, and what is happening is, and I've experienced it, not that often, but a couple times, where you just get 2 of those big 4-wheel drive, 4-door diesel pickup trucks, and they're parked
pinch
relatively
the- close to each other on
yeah.
opposite
sides. It gets really narrow, and I'm actually surprised we haven't had anybody hit one. But I have and again, I have one person in particular that chews on me quite a bit, and a couple other people have mentioned it to me. So, however we can get that, I'll move to approve this, and if we can add it to the ordinance or just do it as a policy decision, whatever.
Are you talking about for here, Commissioner? or the-
No, for
just,
Osceola Street.
Looking back to
Yeah.
Osceola?
Yeah. And again, I think we might need to do it as a separate action, but, so I'm just gonna go ahead and move to approve this, but if it's a policy decision,
If you include it in your motion, it's not gonna need a separate, like, in the code, because there's a code section that covers traffic control devices.
Pardon?
There's a section of the code that covers traffic control devices, so every traffic control device isn't laid out in code.
Okay.
It just said, like, I have the authority to implement temporary traffic control devices, and with your authorization, it can become permanent.
Okay,
So
so
if
I'm
you
gonna-
include it in your motion, we can add the sign, which then becomes a traffic control device.
Okay, I'm gonna include into my motion that we, the 3-hour parking is requested, as staff recommends, and that we, put the signs up to have large truck parking just on one side of the street.
Osceola.
On Osceola between St. Lucie and Haney Circle.
I'll
So
second that.
I'll second, but, so we already have signs
Well,
that
we
have
used to.
specific language regarding that issue.
We had signs, I don't know if we still have them or not.
We had signs, but, we installed them.
Okay.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. I have a question. Going back to that, folks from Sailor's Return parking on this side of the railroad track, and of course, when Hudson comes in and so on. I don't know how long before we move to Wells Fargo or what's happening, but I know that, city manager had mentioned to us that we'd have that trolley system, and I think we need to try as much as possible to accommodate and to not create too many hardships. So, and I know that people want to have extra parking also, and not have to, we have when we have the 3-hour put in, then some of those people might, get zapped, during that time frame. Is there any way that we can probably work with these, persons and let them know about the Wells Fargo, and if they can take the trolley quickly, they could still walk back over, because I think it's gonna be a direct trolley ride from Wells Fargo to where?
Haney
To
Circle.
City Hall?
To Haney Circle.
Just to Haney
Yes.
Circle, okay.
And there's another
Not
tram
to
stop.
City Hall.
And there's another tram stop there that you can pick up and go somewhere else.
Okay.
But for those that are going to Sailor's Return, those employees, all they've got to do is come further up and not in the circle, and they could still park, because there's still plenty of parking down here that's not time
Okay.
limited.
Right in
Okay.
front of the basketball court.
So we'll let them know that, of those changes and what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any other commissioners' discussion before I move to public comment? Can we have some public comment on ordinance number 2477-2021? Unless Mr. Freeman has some other presentation.
He's lining up for the next one.
No, okay. All right, so, any public comments on the motion?
Did I get a second? Was there a second on this motion?
I think
Thank you.
Yes. Any public comments? Is everybody aware of what we're doing and saying? Yes. City clerk? Yes, I'm just making sure. City clerk, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Item number 5 is the abandonment of a portion of the right-of-way between Southeast Fifth Street and Southeast Stitman Boulevard. Ordinance number 2476-2021. Mr. Martell?
Ordinance 2476-2021, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the abandonment of a certain right-of-way within the city limits, being that portion of land which lies between Southeast Fifth Street and Southeast Stitman Boulevard, which is more fully depicted in Exhibit A attached hereto, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you. So before Mr. Freeman even starts, this is that portion that residents were complaining that one person was cleaning up their area and not cleaning up that little portion there from Palm
This-
Beach Road
This was
back.
the issue where the person had a shed that they believed was encroaching in the right-of-way.
Yeah.
It's on, as described here,
Yeah,
Fifth Street
yeah.
and Stitman Boulevard.
There it
It's
is.
on the map,
Yeah.
Move for
All right,
approval.
yeah,
Just one housekeeping issue that we should
Okay.
raise. The ordinance attached to the agenda needs a slight amendment to incorporate a language to the effect that prior to the effective date of the abandonment of the right-of-way, the city shall record a utilities easement, and we'll be amending the ordinance to incorporate that.
Okay, move to approve with the changes as requested by the Director of Development.
Is there a second to the motion made by Commissioner McDonald?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bruner. Any comments from our commission?
No comment.
Any comments from the public on item number 5, which is ordinance number 2476-2021, abandonment of right-of-way between Southeast Fifth Street and Southeast Stitman Boulevard? No comments, Mr. Leggett? It's going to be out of our jurisdiction. Thank you. City Clerk?
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Yes.
Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks. Our next item is something that we'd ask the development director and our city manager and staff to bring to us regarding a discussion on halt or zoning in progress, moratorium, anything with regard to development in the city of Stuart. And Mr. Freeman is here to phrase the issue and provide information to us so that we can have our discussion.
May I go
You already
first,
forgot,
Mayor?
Madam Mayor, you were supposed to turn it to me.
Oh, yes.
We just had breakfast this morning.
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Bruner's trying to.
Go ahead, David, but I wanted to speak next.
Yes, absolutely. So when Commissioner Bruner, in her comments of the last commission meeting, she began speaking of a zoning in progress portion, and it turned into a request to have a workshop on it. And as I thought about that after the meeting more and more, I felt that the zoning in progress could be just a direction from the commission, and then the workshop should actually be what it is we're going to be changing in the zoning. And so I felt that a D&D on the item would be better off to determine if that is the direction that the commission wants to go in, or if there's some other direction that they want to go in. In just a second, I'm going to ask Mr. Mortel to explain the difference between a zoning in progress and what that means, and a moratorium and what that means. I know that's a conversation that the mayor wanted to hear, so hopefully she'll be back before we get there. This discussion revolves around independent discussions I've been having about the amount of growth within the city, the amount of developmental approval, especially as it relates to residential. And Mr. Freeman has a short PowerPoint that shows that residential development, along with some other items that we have been doing within the city as far as build out is concerned, and where we currently lie in that process. So, Mike, if you want to talk real quick about what a ZIP is and what a moratorium is.
So, first,
Oh, wait,
more-
sorry.
Yes, sir?
Didn't the mayor need to hear what you're going to say?
I don't know if she'd listen.
Hey.
I mean,
Yeah.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yeah, maybe Commissioner Bruner. Well, so, I don't know. I mean, I'm not, you're the vice chair.
I'll wait 2 minutes. You guys want to take a 5-minute break? We'll wait for the mayor to return. It's fine with me. I don't, whatever's the pleasure of the board.
We'll wait for the mayor?
I don't, it's your discretion.
I'll just go ahead and.
Go ahead, please.
Take my time here. Hold on. About, let's see, 2007, 2008, our city, what I'm trying to say is, we had gone through a recession in this town. And there were so many foreclosures, commercial properties were empty. It was a really tough time. And the city got through it. They had to lay people off, and there wasn't any building, there wasn't anything going on. And I didn't, all the years, and it just was improving a little more and a little more. And about 6 years ago, 2 years before I ran, what did come through the door watching was developers that would come before us, or come before the other commission, and they never completed. They never built. And it was just a very slow process. And then when I got elected, I just thought this is the way it's going to be. And I had told several of my friends off and on these last couple of years that half of those properties aren't going to be built. Well, I want you to know, going back and looking at all of it, when they say they're going to build within 2 years, every one of them is built, but just a couple. And that was a real shocker to me, that my mindset and way of watching how hard the recession was that we all went through and got through. So I don't want to approve anymore. Anything that comes before me, I'm going to say no. This isn't an easy decision, but there's just too much. There's more coming in. There's more in the pipeline every day. Another one.
Since the mayor is
sorry.
back, maybe I'll quickly talk about what a moratorium is, and before I do that, I'll mention that we all take an oath of office.
I can't
to
hear
follow
you,
the-
Mike.
We all take an oath of office. I said I'm going to talk about a moratorium, and essentially, as a commission, you all take an office to follow the codes and the law in Florida. So I don't think any of us are going to predetermine how we're going to rule on any of the projects that come before us. And we'll probably keep an open mind, rather than saying tonight that we're not going to vote yes on any other projects. I understand your intent
No.
there, but I think we should be clear that it's, you don't
Yes.
want to support the growth, but maybe
Yes, Mr.
we would keep an
Mortel.
open mind. But
Definitely,
anyway,
definitely.
the
Well,
proposal
let me
of a-
finish then. Let
oh,
me just say
okay.
this, and then
I tried to say it.
what comes before us is we have to change so much to get them through. Let me tell you, 8, 6, 7, 9 years ago, we did that. I mean, there wasn't anything. We needed it. So I'm not, if they come through the straight, the straight zoning, fine with that. But I can't say what I'm going to do. I mean, I will listen and partake and try to be as open-minded as I can. That's it.
Thank you,
And
Commissioner.
thank you. I really appreciate Mr. Mortel when he steps in and guides me, and where I don't say anything that's going to get my city in trouble. This is my own personal opinion, is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Anyway, the last meeting and at other meetings, we've discussed the potential for zonings in progress and moratoriums. Historically, an example of a zoning in progress that the city did adopt for a very short period of time was when the legislation was pending, or not legislation, there was a ballot agenda item regarding legalization for medical purposes of marijuana. And there was a short zoning in progress to wait and see what the outcome of the election was, to avoid dispensaries popping up everywhere. And quite frankly, at the end of the zoning in progress, the commission did not make any changes and didn't adopt anything. It just said, okay, we're good to go. And it kind of categorized dispensary as anywhere else that a pharmacy like a Walgreens or something like that could pop up, and that was good, and it didn't really result in anything. On the other hand, a moratorium is a situation where the city anticipates an overlook. For example, when Commissioner Bruner said, they want to change directions, and if the city were to say, okay, back historically in the late 80s or early 90s, the county entered a moratorium based on concurrency and said it would no longer accept any applications for any projects on Canner Highway, US 1 north of the Roosevelt Bridge, Indian Street, and other locations. And it was regardless of what property you already owned or what you already had. It didn't matter what your use was. No permits would be processed. It would be a moratorium on applications being received. Since then, the state changed, and that was based upon concurrency and saying that the roads did not have the traffic capacity to support it, and there were certain regulations back then. Since then, the law on concurrency changed, and the zoning in progress and moratorium can kind of be a mixed breed. Like, so you could, if a moratorium would say a direction to the development department, I don't care who they are, if they come in this geographic area for a permit, the permit is not accepted. Doesn't matter what it's for, we're gonna review those for, we're gonna have a 6-month period to wait, whether it's a single-family home or a pet store or a condominium building or a church, doesn't matter. And then a zoning in progress is a situation where the city is deciding that it's gonna move forward and draft new legislation. And while that legislation is pending, it wants to prevent other applications from being submitted that are in the pipeline and are not applicable to the legislation. So a zoning in progress can be kind of a hybrid, and you could say in a zoning in progress, certainly during this time frame, anybody that wants to make an application for a development order or a project to come forward is welcome to submit a permit to the development department to have a building permit issued, so long as it doesn't deviate from those entitlements in the code already. So, for example, I'm going to use buffer. If somebody wanted to build a house and they needed a 10-foot setback, but the house design needed a 1-foot variance because their front porch stuck into the buffer by 12 inches, that would need a action by the commission to waive that, and as a result, the direction in the zoning in progress would be to the development office, no permits of that nature are going to be accepted until we finish doing whatever new legislation we're going to do as it relates to development. But if somebody came in and said, I own this lot and I meet the code, I don't need any action from the commission, in a zoning in progress, the development office could still accept that, and anywhere in between. So the moratorium versus a zoning in progress are very similar, except a zoning in progress kind of allows you to make a hybrid and to address certain things while the zoning is pending, where a moratorium says, today is, the Monday before Thanksgiving, we are not going to accept any other development applications or process any development applications for a period of 120 days, period. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Well,
Mr. Mortel,
Counselor-
what happens to the current applications that are in?
Any application that is already filed is vested as having been filed.
Yes.
So whether it's a zoning in progress or a moratorium, the moratorium would apply to all applications filed after the adoption of the moratorium, and the zoning in progress would be the same thing, but whatever the new zoning was would not apply to any applications that have already been filed.
Well, Counselor, I don't want to change that, a moratorium. That's not what I'm up here for today. It's time for me. I just need to see 6 months, a year, if it's going to keep coming and coming and coming. I want it to, for me, I want it to stop coming. And I never thought I'd ever sit up here and say something like that. Never.
Let's take a look at the data that Kev Freeman has on where we're at and what we already have in process or through the pipeline, and then we can continue this discussion. And even if it's nothing, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mortel, but if someone comes before us with something as simple as a land use change, and the commission says, I want that to stay commercial, they can.
Well, so let's talk about stuff that we have pending, or applications that are currently pending. If they have to come before, so before this meeting, I saw this agenda item, and I was trying to think to myself, is there a need for a zoning in progress, or is there a need for a moratorium? And at the end of a zoning in progress, will we actually take some kind of action that will have made it worth entering a zoning in progress and limiting access and limiting these things? And I was trying to think around all the different parcels in the city of Stuart, and the fear or the concerns that I hear are related to large residential development, and the word density is like a bad word these days, is my perception of it. Now, ironically, if somebody came in and wanted to build a commercial building of the same mass, it doesn't seem to be an issue.
Like
And I'll
the
use,
size of Costco, you mean?
well, ironically, Costco was 162,000 square feet under one roof, and no one cared that it was the size of a stadium. But the two.
I wouldn't say no one
Well,
cared.
nobody cared,
I would
but.
say it
but-
drew some
but it wa-
attention.
The size of Costco wasn't the issue. The size of the parking lot might have been. But there was never, not one person said, how tall is Costco? I didn't ever hear that question in 14 hours of testimony.
You're right.
So it's, the density is the issue. So I was looking at it from, okay, what about residential? Well, generally speaking, the issue has been a future land use trending toward what Jessica said earlier. Historic land use was the tray table where the beans are separated from the hamburger and all the other stuff. And more modern zoning or more modern land use is a blend of uses to try and keep the uses together so people don't always have to drive to do all this stuff. Well, our future land uses are somewhat antiquated to the extent that we find ourselves needing to do future land use amendments in order to pursue the recommendations of Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and other planners to pursue the concepts of these mixed uses or these integrated zoning. So whether we have a zoning in progress or not, right now, I spoke to the city manager about this, but there were very few parcels that wouldn't need some type of future land use amendment in order to pursue those developments anyway. And if the commission votes no on the future land use amendment side of it, the development side of it is dead in the water. I mean, it doesn't happen because they can't do it.
We're talking residential, I am. And the CRA is so important to me. What this town has been doing for the last 30, 35 years, I want that to keep going. And what the regional planning presents to us and helps us and teaches us and we learn as we go along. I mean, it is so important that there would be so much blight around if we didn't have this. We're a great city. We're going in the right direction. I don't want to cause any trouble, but those 4 stories is what it is, and how many. So I'll let others speak.
Kev, you want to show the data real quick that you have, and then we'll go?
Yeah. Kevin Freeman, Development Director. You've all seen this before, and I think it reflects what Commissioner Bruner has just talked about. We have had since 2017, a whole raft of primarily residential applications coming forward. And you'll see from the green indication that there is a pattern that these things, if they do get approved, will move to construction. There is definite intent from a development point of view, from a developer side, that if they're moving through the process, they're going to do something with it. I think that we have a situation in the city where land values have finally equated to the market values, which is not a good sign for residential home buyers, but that's where we stand in the city. And from previous years, maybe development was slowed primarily by the differential between the land value and the potential for a developer to maintain a profit from that development. We're now seeing a market which is so inflated in terms of demand that whatever we do, or whatever landowners do, seems to be not holding development progress because construction's going on. And we also note that it's not just one area in the city, it's citywide. It's not a focus on the CRA, it's not a focus north or south. This is a widespread development activity responding to the market demands for housing, primarily. At this moment in time, we're seeing a lot of housing. What I know from experience in the development field, we go through peaks and troughs of various housing demand and then commercial demand. And that is a planning accepted theory, is housing creates commercial, commercial creates housing. It's a continual circle of supply and demand. And one thing that you've not really noted, and I don't think we've presented is that over the same period in time, the 2017 to 2021, we've approved in the city over 1 million square feet of commercial floor space. But when you look at the breakdown of that commercial floor space, you'll see how it reflects what's going on in the residential point of view. Almost half of that commercial floor space is storage unit of some sort. And when I say 1 million square feet, that's what we've seen approved and what we've got on the books. So that's everything that's in the system at the moment. And that includes the Canna PUD. So planning theory would then say that, and we don't really know the demand and supply of commercial floor space. We've had the pandemic, which has affected the way that businesses operate, stores operate, and what the consumer, how the consumer operates. So we know there's going to be more consumers in town because there are going to be people living in these residential units. That, as a consequence, increases demand for retail, leisure, commercial activities, and all the things you're seeing lagging slightly now. So, unfortunately, I don't see an end in the residential. I don't see a lag. The only thing that I can see controlling the residential is land supply at the moment. And if that balance, if the tipping point is dependent on vacant sites, then we are running out of those properties. We might then see a turn to to a mixed-use development, which would, I think that's where the city attorney is talking to, our land use categories would be struggling to incorporate the mixed uses that we would want to see in there.
I would like to add that I think now, with what we have and what's going to, all of that coming aboard in the next 2 years, that we can sustain ourselves now. But if we continue and get another 1,000 or whatever, we're going to have a fire department at the southern end of this city and police, and we don't have to do that now. Where we're at and when this is complete, we won't need that. But further, we will, I believe.
So this is, I did a quick analysis.
It'll be a big expense.
Yes, I did a very quick analysis this afternoon based on the categories of future land use that we have in the city and what we have in the comprehensive plan and what would happen if you applied the basic floor area ratio and density allowed in each of those future land uses. And the next table, I want you to all hold on to your chairs because this is what's allowed in the city at this moment in time. So, under the comprehensive plan, if we apply the density calculations under normal zoning for the city, you're looking at a residential build-out potential of 22,000 and more homes.
Kev, is that vacant land available in the
No,
city, or is that?
that's what people are entitled to build under straight zoning.
Under straight zoning,
Yes.
under the whole city, or just what's vacant?
I've not pulled out, I can't.
He's asking if
There's
this
no
is
guarantee.
additional,
Yes, there's
is
no
this
guarantee.
additional or total?
This is total. This is
This
what the
is total,
comprehensive
okay.
plan
Yeah, this
allows.
is total.
This is full build.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
full build-out, this
Yes.
isn't, I just want people to see the number of units and say, oh, we got 22,000 additional units
Additional,
coming.
right, no,
It's not
that's
additional
total.
units.
That's total, that's.
No, it's
but
not
I just
additional
wanna
use,
make
but
sure-
people could come in and build those units. And put this,
Additional units.
no, total units in
Total
the city.
units, yeah, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
but I just. wanna
Counting what's
clarify that it's
currently
total
built, counting
And
what's
they'll
current.
always be able to do that.
They will always be, yes, they
Yes.
will be.
I mean-
Yes,
Because if
But
we
that's the
tried to change that, it would be a taking, correct?
correct. Unless the comprehensive plan was changed.
By the way,
and future land uses.
even if the comprehensive plan was changed, if you took away a substantial property right from them, so for example, if, right now their zoning entitles them to 10 units per acre, if you broke that down to 2 units an acre.
That would be a take.
You'd be taking.
Exactly.
If they can go up to 30 units an acre, it's not a taking to if you moved it from 30 to 27, that they could go up to. It wouldn't constitute a substantial removal of property rights because they didn't have a vested property right of 30, they had a vested property right of the other number.
Basics, straight zoning.
Yep.
Kev, can I ask, Mayor, can I ask a question? What's the difference between low and high?
Low is straight zoning without coming, before commission. That
And high would be maximum.
That would
by
be
PUD.
coming to commission and asking for perhaps 30 units per acre.
Kev, how many acres of vacant, undeveloped land do we have in the city? Any idea?
I don't have that number on me.
It's not very much, though.
It's not. When you look at you're looking at probably 4 or 5 major sites that,
So
that may
like
have,
Under 100 acres, maybe?
oh, well under 100, yeah.
Well under, so
Yeah.
we're well under 100 acres,
Yeah.
so, and, okay.
Can, Mr. Freeman, can you go back to the first slide you put up? So, I understand everything that's in the status of construction. Obviously, that's currently being built. Can you expand on what the in review means? Like Central Parkway Loft, so that was approved as an RPUD by the commission. So that's in review prior to construction, but that's done and approved by the commission, correct?
It is. It's in review by the building department.
Okay, but that is different than in review at the bottom of Silverthorne.
Yes.
And Riverside.
Yes.
And Avonlea, number 10,
Yeah.
is that in review prior to, can we break down the in review column
Yes.
and differentiate in review coming to
Yes.
the commission versus in review for our building department? Because once it's approved by the commission,
True.
it is approved,
True.
right?
Yes.
So how many of those in the blue column of in review could, by the way I would look at this as a commissioner, fall into the approved column?
Just central.
Just central, yes. Just central.
Okay, so the Avonlea 10 and 13,
They are in the development department at the moment being reviewed, awaiting.
but
moving
they
forward to
have
the
been
LPA.
approved prior, so they're coming back to us. Is their plan for us, a major site plan amendment or a minor?
PUD amendments, yes.
But in a sense, both those residential units, is this data reflecting what they've already been approved for back in a decade ago or 6 or 8 years ago?
Essentially, yes.
Okay, so essentially those, both the Avonlea properties are working off something that they were pre-approved for.
That's correct.
If I can chime in real fast on
yeah,
that, I can tell you that the expert on behalf of the petitioner in the Costco case, who worked for 17 years in DCA reviewing plans, said that what we should have done was the approval like they did in 1998 that he approved, which was in fact the Avonlea project, which included a special neighborhood district, but that's neither here nor there, but that's been approved since 1998.
Yeah.
Okay, but would it be correct in assuming, Mr. Mortel, once something's approved, what's the likelihood of that approval getting revoked back to pre-approval conditions?
The city of Stuart does not have a pre-approval, it's not a policy, and you could put it in your ordinances that, for example, down on US 1, there used to be the hardware store that's owned by the Timon family, and it became the Fountains, or whatever it was called. A long time ago, it was approved and never got built, now it's just vacant on US 1. That PUD essentially expired for lack of construction and didn't get built within the requirements of the PUD. But when the PUD expired, the land does not have a reverter in the PUD that reverts it back to commercial so that it's available for commercial development. Historically, the commission didn't want that to happen because they wanted the landowner once subjecting themselves to the jurisdiction of the city, to have to come back in and amend or revise or reinstate or do whatever was necessary, rather than having the ability to do straight building with a straight permit. So that the fountains on US 1 in South Stuart is currently in a PUD that is essentially out of its time frame, and essentially that property has a future land use, but doesn't have any present zoning on it that would allow it to come in and build per code, because its zoning is PUD.
Can we give it 2 years? We don't have that, the time. Can we set it up where if they don't do it in 2 years, they have to start over?
But does every state of emergency pause that?
Yes.
if we
It gives
had
6-month
time?
extensions, but an example of giving 2 years, it took 4.5 years for Azul to build. So a 2-year window would have caused them to default.
2 years is not enough.
Right.
No, but from what I've learned so far, basically, once something is approved, it's approved, and they might be coming back to us for a minor or major site plan amendment. But there's no going back to pre-approval process. They will have that right to build what was approved, whether it's, if you look at Avonlea, some of that stuff was approved, as Mr. Mortel said, in 98.
Well, Avonlea, though, didn't have an expiration. The Avonlea development said it is going to stay and not expire, and it's going to be able to be straight approved. I mean, you could enter an approval that says, here's your approval for 9 units, and if you don't build the 9 units by 2025, that approval expires and you can't come back in. And, by the way, when they do come back in, the commission can and not only can, but has required additional requirements. They have to bring it up to a new code. It's not what was approved. It's the new requirements of the new LDRs that say the parking code is X number of spaces, or the
Stormwater.
tree, or the stormwater, or whatever
But you're
the
not
new
working
details
off
are,
of the
become
vacant
in
land
play.
prior to that
Right.
approval.
No.
Your new foundation you're working off of was the last
PUD.
approval.
Yes.
Right.
So it does change. You're not going back to
Right.
those preconditions. So another thing I'm interested, what's the total on all of these before us? A total number of units that are,
I think it's just over 3,000.
3,095.
Yeah.
so
Not
3,000,
counting Silverthorne.
3,095.
No, I think that's the total.
That's
what's it?
inclusive.
That's
Everything
inclusive.
that's on the books at the moment.
Okay.
In review or approved.
So Commissioner Bruner, I feel the very similar feelings that you do. As many of you know, I served on the School Board Boundary Advisory Committee for the past few months, and looking at those numbers as far as students and concurrency, and do we have the capacity at our schools? And, Martin County High School, I believe, was close to 130% or so, and we shifted around. Our recommendation was to shift some of the high school districts, which will ultimately have a cascading effect down the school system. But basically, to summarize it, at the end of the day, all 3 of our high schools are going to be left roughly 110% or so, depending on what the school board's ultimate decision is, or a little over that. With factoring some of this in, but not all of these stats, I can tell you. And, I agree that for us to make the best decisions, we need to see how the city reacts when some of this is built and online. For the first year or two, I gave a solid push for approving some projects, knowing that what I heard from residents was there was a lack of housing, whether it was rental or townhouses, for the younger, fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, 25 to 35-year-old age group. I believe we've fulfilled that need, and we've made a significant push to try and do what we can with the limitations we can for affordable housing. And we have been somewhat successful for workforce housing in some projects, and others not as successful as I'd like to be, and then we've watched the market steadily increase. And in my mind, somewhat price that hard pushes that we've made, price a lot of people out of the market. I can tell you at this point, I will certainly take everything with an open mind, but at bare minimum, I see no need to change our future land use to encourage more residential development right now in the city.
Madam Mayor, are you done, Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner McDonald.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of thoughts. One is, just gonna go down, I just kind of got a couple of thoughts in there, not necessarily any specific order. I'm not in favor of a zoning in progress or a moratorium, but I am in favor of not approving any future land use amendments with the exception of redevelopment in the CRA. I think that we need to continue to focus on the CRA, and especially in light of what Jessica showed us today, anything that helps us bring that high-quality mixed use, more sustainable development, we need to focus on that. Second thing is, or third thing, I guess I'm losing, stormwater. A couple of you mentioned stormwater. We've been talking about some stormwater. We've also been talking about, Kev mentioned issue about the underground stormwater, and that we need to look at that. The reality is we need to look at stormwater just from a perspective of climate change and from a hardening aspect of sustainability. So if we go and we focus on our stormwater, that is, and at the same time as we focus on that, that may actually change some of the calculations as far as development. And I think that will actually be a very positive way of doing to ensure that we're not having flooding and we're controlling our stormwater, preventing runoff. Because as much as we concern ourselves with the runoff going into the river, what I hear about stormwater from most of the people is about flooding in their neighborhoods. And everybody worries about the river, but they really worry about when their house floods or in their yard is floods and I almost said basement. That's my northern. Until you've gone in your basement at 6 feet of water, you don't know what a flood is. Anybody that's lived up north understands that. One of the first things that we worked on when I came back onto the commission was that amenities list. And one of the things we can, just as we held the developer for Costco to a very high standard for the number of amenities, a road, a linear park, all these other things, we can just, make sure that development department knows to tell the developers that, look, we need to have a high intensity of these amenities if we're going to vote for something. So I think if we focus on those issues, it's going to bring things under control. At the same time, one of the reasons why, and I look back and me and you'll have been up here a long time. One of the things I look at, one of the reasons why we're at where we are is because not just here, but the entire country didn't build anything for about 12 years. From 2017 to 2019, there was virtually no residential development, very minimal. We used to go to those joint city-county school board meetings, and the county would talk about 38 building permits in the last 6 months. And if you look at not just around Stuart, you look at Martin County, you've got Pineland Prairie, which is Newfield, 4,200 homes. You got the development at out there by Christ Fellowship, 300 homes. You got Harmony, which is 4,000 homes. You've got Discovery Land, which is 312, and numerous other.
US 1 and Goldenrod.
Yeah, US 1 and Goldenrod. I don't even know how many units that is, but and then when you get outside of, I read an article that the city of Tampa was having discussions at their city council level regarding apartment development. The pressure is there because there's a shortage of housing nationwide. California estimates there are 5 million home residences behind. And that's why they changed the state law to eliminate single-family zoning.
And they require every local government to have a housing upzoning
Oh,
plan.
yeah, and their Attorney General has created a office which only has 12 attorneys, which considering the size of California isn't that many, but their first investigation is into a local community that turned down a 495-unit apartment complex. And I am.
California.
Yes, it is California, but what I'm getting at is the way our legislature tends to be directing far as home rule and moving away from it. I can see that happening in the future. I hope it doesn't, because what's the point? That's the one thing that we're really up here struggling with, and if it's taken away from us. But, so just to recap, my thoughts, no on moratorium, no on the zoning in progress, focus on stormwater, enhancing our stormwater and upgrading our stormwater regulations. No future land use changes, because correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that's a policy change, a decision. So we can do that with the exception of inside the CRA, and then really hold the developers, the applicants accountable as far as the amount of these. If they want to have anything approved, they better bring their A game. So that's my thoughts, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. I just want to say to Mr. Freeman and to staff, Mr. Martell, one of the things when we approve things and I think when Terry McCarthy, I don't know if I want to call names, we had a project that came in and there was over the bridge, and they had affordable housing a long time ago, and we were changing some things. It wasn't necessarily for a negative reason, but it's always an issue that how can we get more, even with the development and the type of development that's coming in, whether it's a land use amendment or trying to develop something that was already approved or needed to have some change in it. How can we get more affordable housing, and how can we get a very well-defined affordable housing plan so that people, people who are looking for affordable housing know what to expect. We know that we always say it's a market, and we know what is already approved and in the pipeline, and most of it is not affordable. But I think that has been the thing, and I think that people have been thinking that, maybe we'll approve and approve and approve until we approve something that's positive. In terms of holding down something as a moratorium, I know that someplace like East Stuart with the Taylor property, they've been trying to come in for a few years now, and I know that we haven't seen anything specific. But if something like that comes in, will that be under, because they haven't put any plans on, it's just that the land has been there, and there's no East Stuart PUD that's would come under straight zoning. Would that be under a moratorium if we ever had a moratorium?
If you included it.
But we're talking about trying to maybe select the CRA out of something like that, so it would be more of the
Zoning.
areas that are not in the CRA that would be coming in for either an intense land use change or even just a land use change, whether it's from commercial to residential or vice versa.
I don't know that there was any discussion regarding land use change. There was a discussion about a moratorium and not accepting any permits, and then there was a potential discussion regarding zoning in progress. But the zoning may not have anything to do with land use. It could be just stormwater zoning, or it could be just, I know for years commissioners have talked about having a transitionary parking so that downtown where it's parking exempt, then having another radius of parking around downtown that was not the full parking requirements, that was maybe 50% of the parking requirements. So that could be a zoning in progress too. It's not just restricted to whether it's changing to residential, whether it's multifamily, whether it's, those other terms.
And my other question is, I know that we've seen the build-out numbers. Have we looked at the reality of the impact on our tax base and so on, if we, I think I've heard if we stop, everything, sure that there would be an impact. So,
At some point, I mean, we still have projects that aren't even got a shovel on the ground yet, so there is still some coming in. The economy right now is good, so I mean, I'm not overly concerned about that, but I would be overly concerned that we do this and it goes on too long and it discourages anyone from coming to the city in the future, and then we have an issue, a recession or whatever, and then we have no one coming. That's where the issue would come up. And I do want to correct one thing. I think Kev may be forgetting things like the landfill and those other properties, and I had another staff member who went on the property appraiser's office real fast, and there's about 725 acres of vacant property. About 725 acres of vacant property.
because we have the landfill, which is a large,
That alone, I think, is 50. So, I mean, there's multiple parcels all over the place.
And that's excluding conservation public? Because there's a lot of open space that's in conservation and in public.
Yeah, I mean, that could include some of that conservation. It doesn't say specifically on here, but it does say like residential and non-residential, but some of it says vacant commercial, industrial, condo, and institutional. I don't see one just says vacant acreage. That one could be that's 108 acres. That could be some of the conservation. He did take out parks and things of that nature.
Well, it was a good conversation, and I'm thankful that you listened.
If we were to go down the route of a zoning in progress, but only outside of the CRA, and while we had those workshops, this isn't something that's indefinite. You're looking at a time period that till the job is completed.
Correct.
Correct. And two, if we did that and those workshops led to changing zoning and alterations in our CRA, that is allowable as well, right? There's no reason behind that. It would just be that outside of the CRA, there'd be a zoning in progress, but we could, still allow projects to come forward in the CRA while we debated the entirety of the city of Stuart's zoning. And included in that debate could be stormwater and keeping more keeping more water on the property, sorry.
Well, we'd probably, I imagine, based on what I've heard you discuss in the past, it would revolve around stormwater and wetlands. And the reason I bring wetlands into it is because I don't know of any wetland issue within the CRA where there are wetland issues outside the CRA.
And I know a lot of this would depend on the timing of the workshops but if we went down that route of a zoning in progress, just outside of the CRA, what would that timeline look like? How long would that last, plus or minus?
The zoning in progress?
Yeah.
It depends on what the zoning is.
What's the point? I mean, what are we trying to address? Stormwater?
Right. If it's something that's easily written.
Or is it just to stop all development?
I think it's to take a broad look at the city's zoning.
We can do that without a zoning in progress.
right?
We can.
So,
A broad look at city zoning happens every other Monday night at the meetings. Normally, a zoning in progress is when you're specifically identifying a code that you believe you need to modify in a particular fashion.
and if
And
that's
as a result,
stormwater,
during the modification process, you don't want people making application that would be exempted from it.
So how long would it take with stormwater?
if I want, 3 inches of water instead of 1 to be held on all properties, does that take a zoning in progress?
No, because it
We can
depends.
change that.
You could say, we don't want to accept any new applications during the timeframe that's pending, because you're so afraid that people are going to come in and be
Rush.
overwhelmed by that they're going to rush the gates to submit submittals to circumvent it. The likelihood is not the case, if under that example, that would be the case, because people can still do their thing, they just have to design a different system. It's not taking away space or density or anything from them, it's just saying, look, instead of holding this much, you have to hold that much. But you have an option, you could do it that way, and then the question is, how long would that take? If the commission voted 5-0 to change it from 1 to 3, and that was the only change, I suspect Kevin could get that back to you and we get adopted in 2 public readings like the code requires. So that would go pretty quickly. Normally what happens is the zoning in progress is a much more detailed, or it's kind of like you guys are doing. You have this discussion that's more complicated and is going to last multiple months, and we're going to do whatever it might be.
Similar to our EAR.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right,
You know,
let's go home.
Wait,
She's done.
we're just getting into it now.
You brought it up,
Let's
Commissioner
talk about-
Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer, have you expressed your
Commissioner Meyer.
opinion on?
Oh, I'm being invited to now.
Yeah.
I am not necessarily in favor of a zoning in progress or a zoning edit, one or the other. I don't want this to be cart before the horse. I mean, I'll just go out and say, I do not believe in us doing a zoning in progress with the true intention of halting development, but us saying that it's for some reason. There are things we need to address, absolutely. And so I'm 100% behind us doing whatever it takes, whether that's a zoning in progress, a series of workshops that coincide with the zoning in progress, or us just, working with Joe Capra and having him come and present the stormwater master plan back to us and start chipping away at that. I agree with you. We should be I want low-impact development standards built into our code. I want to hold more stormwater on parcels. I want a lot of things too. So I'm open to having that discussion, but I mean, it would be a lie to say that, that
you need the zoning in progress to do.
well, I just don't know. I don't know about that, and
No, I'm not certain that we need that to have that discussion, and that's, at least
yeah.
the 3 of us, that's the highest on my list. I can say I support what Commissioner Bruner is saying. I'm very reluctant to encourage more development outside of the CRA.
And I'll just go into that as well. I agree. The CRA needs to be our priority. What I'm anxious about, truly, is that, this is a small town. Word gets out, we had a change commission come in, and it happened to coincide with the market explosion around the country, to your point, Commissioner McDonald. I hear about it at the League of Cities meetings. Everybody is complaining and being beaten up by their constituents because everywhere is going through a building boom right now. And so, unfortunately, it's our task right now to be dealing with it. I don't want us to put the word out that we're closed for business when there's still, we finally now, because of the fact that we have shown that we were open for development, yes, we have had some fringe development. That's not ideal, but now we have projects coming into the CRA. There are big empty lots on Ocean, right up 2-minute walking distance from here, that are finally now in the pipeline. And that's because we can put an edict out there that this is our future land use map, and this is our zoning, and this is how the code works. It will never, the market is still a real thing. We have to try to work with the market and incentivize.
I should also point out to you guys that when we talk about fringe developments, the city of Stuart is 5 square miles.
Yes.
It's essentially a
Lots
postage
of
stamp.
Thank you.
There is nowhere
We're still
Stuart
in,
that's
we're
fringe.
the urban core of the county, but what I'm trying to get at is, for our purposes, we could have denied all projects that came in, and nothing would have been built that wouldn't have, it wouldn't have then made the developers go, oh, I guess I can't do it there. Well, I'm gonna go and do it in the CRA. We have primed the engine, and now finally there's the attention that we have needed in the CRA. So I just want to,
Mike, that CRA money that it produces and to make our city great like it is.
I mean, yes, I think we've done some good work with Rita and with some of our focus on the beautification, but I truly believe that what really did it is that we have had some new development outside of the CRA, because then that helps the market overcome the pricing, the land value challenges in the CRA. That's the unfortunate reality. We live in a free market society, and that's how this all works. And I mean, there's some interventions we can take, but I guess what I'm just trying to get at is, you know, we need to be really clear, and I think we are being clear, that we really want that energy and focus on the CRA, and I'm totally willing for us to be more careful about proposals coming in that require land use changes or rezoning to PUDs. I'm totally on board with that. I just don't want us to send the message that suddenly we are going to beat developers up, because the CRAs are where the real battles are going to be. I mean, you want to talk about traffic and people coming out. I mean, we're going to have some tough battles over what needs to be dense projects in our CRA on Ocean, and I just don't want us to scare away, because that's so critical. That's so critical, not just for our tax base, but for the future of our vibrant, walking, working, living downtown.
I agree.
I agree with you, Mike. I think you've hit a lot of the things, and in the free marketplace is one of the things I think about. The city's comp plan, though it's moved and has ebbs and flows over the last 30 years, there's a couple consistent things. For example, the 4-story limit. We've had a 4-story limit, and it's just now that we're really starting to see 4 stories being built, and it's market forces
You say it, go ahead.
driving.
You're not getting picked up on the
I'm
microphone.
sorry. Sorry about that. It's just now that the market force is driving that. I'm surprised, to be honest. I mean, even when we did Azul, they chose not to go 4 stories. They went 3. But that market forces. Azul was the first multi-family project not built in just the city, in the entire county, and I think had been like 12 or 13 years. That's what is driving this need. There's people that are, in my old business that I had, I used to go to people's house and deliver them documents. Most of the time, they didn't want them. But you would be, I was shocked at how many multiple generation families across all incomes, all diversity of ethnic groups, of neighborhoods, of usually at least 2, but often 3 generations living in one house. And I think what is between the economy changing, maybe the pandemic, maybe people just getting sick of each other, we're seeing this change where everybody's like trying to get their space. And that's what's driving this need. And it's just not, again, it's not just here, but we are seeing here in our state incredible expansion of people moving down. And now that the country is starting to open up from the pandemic, foreign investors are coming back, and that's going to really change the real estate market as well. So, I mean, we're going to be facing a lot of pressure, and it's going to be and I agree with what everybody said, but I definitely especially agree with like your approach. I think I have a similar. I think we really need to focus on our stormwater, and we can focus on the low impact development and all of these things. We can do those things. Make the incremental changes and work towards that without a zoning in progress or a moratorium. That's what I just believe.
Madam Mayor, if I can just sum
Yes,
up
Mr.
some
Meyer,
of my.
Commissioner
And then
Meyer.
I'm done for the night. So
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
I don't want to lose sight, though, of the fact that there are very real consequences to development. I want to look forward to us tightening up stormwater and being more resilient for a climate future. But it is true that we have a lot of new development coming online. Development is not inherently bad. I think we all understand that. And I think most of our constituents and people in the community understand that as well. What we're really concerned about, to your point about the schools, is how can we absorb the effects of the growth? Those are real concerns that I think we ought to talk about, and whether it's in a workshop form or, you know, I don't know enough about the school district and whether or not they can handle the growth. I mean, I think those are valid concerns. I think we should have professionals come in and talk to us about traffic and how do small cities with very congested pinch points like we have. I mean, the river and the bridges really makes it a challenge for us. And so what creative strategies can we employ to help deal with some of those pinch points? I mean, you know, I think there are ways we ought to be addressing some of the challenges with growth, but we also have to be realistic and say, you know, for the last year or two, when people have been screaming at us about, the traffic is so bad because of all of the explosion in the city of Stuart, we know that's not true because it's hardly any of it's come online yet. And yes, it's a valid point that when it comes online, will the traffic get worse? Probably in certain places, but I also believe that the traffic patterns will change. The pinch points in the city are at US 1 and Canner, at Monterey and Canner, at US 1 north of the bridge, at Wright and turning onto Dixie. Those are real pinch points, and those are due to growth outside of the city. That's Port St. Lucie, that's Southern County, that's Palm City, that's Jensen, and some of the city too. So we are in a situation, like it or not, where the roads in our city have been so clogged by development pressure from outside the city. And so if we were to just say, we're not approving anything else, we lose the financial ability to deal with those challenges, because Port St. Lucie and St. Lucie County aren't going to be giving us money to deal with US 1 and Canner. But they're people who have not historically ever been able to live in Stuart, yet they come and work here, they shop here, they spend every day here. They're clogging up those roadways because we haven't been able to accommodate them. I hope that some of this residential development will accommodate them. So again, we have to remember, this city map, to Mr. Mortel's point, it's not a black hole outside of that. I mean, we are in the core of a county next to explosive growth, Port St. Lucie, and we can't prevent them from coming through here. It's a feather in our cap, an unfortunate one, that we are still such an important job center, retail center, entertainment center for the residents of St. Lucie County and Port St. Lucie. And so, I don't know. We have the power as a commission, and maybe we're feeling like we haven't exercised it very well in the past few years, but we have the power at every hearing, and I know we all take this very seriously, to weigh the evidence, approve or deny. We don't have to make administrative changes to prevent things from coming to us. We still have the responsibility and authority to say that's not right, or yes, I want that, or we can still approve or deny a land use change, a PUD, a zoning. So what I would like to just say is I'm open to whatever mechanisms there are for addressing the real needs, which are stormwater, and then how do we address the challenges facing our community due to growth, not just in the city, especially not just in the city, but in our region. What can we do to help with the traffic, to help with the limited resources on public safety in schools? Those are the things that we need to address, because those are the real problems.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. And I must say, thank you, Commissioner Bruner, for bringing this to our attention, and for staff for looking into this. Do we have enough information to ask staff to come back to us in the future with something, or is the discussion what it is, and we have the wherewithal to take care of our development approval process and to work things, if the process works the way it's supposed to work, we should be able to manage. Plus, we need to do some work on our build out or transportation evaluation, maybe do something else with the regional planning council or somebody else who can look at something, even with the county. We do have a good relationship when we have those joint meetings where we've seen how some of these projects come together. And I think stormwater and transportation are always the big issues. I admire you, although it's an obvious thing, for literally saying that the city of Stuart is smack dab in the middle of, the Treasure Coast area, basically, and smack dab in the middle of our county, where a lot of things happen through here, a lot of things go through here, and people do come here to work every day. They do leave, and that's a lot of the frustration with traffic and so on that happens. But I think, we're talking about it because we have it on development and discussion, but do we want to have a workshop and hear from the public about what they feel about our processes and how things are going? And what do you think? What do we want to do? What do we want to go any further with this? And of course, we have a public meeting now that we're going to ask.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, the workshop normally isn't necessarily the input from the public, and that would be here at your regular commission meetings. I will be bringing back a workshop to you probably. This satisfied my intent on sooner rather than later that I asked you guys about.
Yes, sir.
So this will probably be after the holidays in January sometime, because I still owe you a workshop on the wetlands comparison situation between us and the county. And we'll try to add some stormwater to that workshop as well. So that will still be coming back to you, but from what I hear tonight, it's status quo as far as our process is concerned, and you guys will evaluate that and make the determination on what you're going to do with each development independently.
Very good, thank you. Good night.
Well,
One more thing, can I say this? I know at one time we had an agreement with, I don't know if it was Indian River State College or somebody had done some kind of a interactive process. And I don't know if there's a way for us to continue or develop an interactive process where people can go and look and see where we are in development, what's our build out, what's happening with this. I don't know if that's too expensive or that's not something that we need to do, but some type of an interactive process. I think we.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I only interrupt because we got notification today from the MPO that they're working on a multi-jurisdiction GIS map that's going to have all of the cities, county, everyone on this one GIS layer that will have all of the developments that are in process and all that stuff in it to help with that planning purposes, mainly for traffic, but for other purposes as well.
you were talking about the 1,000 Friends of Florida development seminar that
Okay.
Commissioner Bruner and I went to several years ago at the IRSC Wolf Center
Okay,
that
yes.
Regional Planning Council hosted.
Yeah,
That was good.
yeah.
Vice Mayor,
For me, when I look at property rights, approving variances does not infringe, rejecting the approval of variances does not infringe on someone's property rights.
Yep.
I differentiate those two, and I also differentiate the way I feel when properties are within the CRA and when they're out of the CRA. And, that being said, the more projects and the amount we have in the pipeline means overall everything has to, the bar for bare minimum has to inch higher and higher every time. But just knowing that we have Port St. Lucie north of us and Martin County, and I know the message has been mixed throughout the years, but I think the five of us up here know that the reality is Martin County has got a lot larger projects on the books and in their pipeline than we do. And, there's no even touching Port St. Lucie. But that's a fight I will happily give up. I'm not trying to compete with any of them in terms of a matter of growth, because
no one is.
When you do that, that affects your quality of life. And we work for the residents that live here now. And so quality of life, I do agree with you on the vacant lots that are in the CRA, and that should be our focus. I think we've all stated that unanimously, I think. But outside of that CRA, again, I'm going to be very reluctant on anything above and beyond straight zoning.
Madam Mayor, I know I sound like a broken record on this, but I just feel compelled I have to say it again. And I know everyone loves the CRA. I love the CRA. It does a lot of good work. But it's the stuff outside the CRA that pays for your police and your fire and your public works and everything else.
Sir.
And we
CRA
have a lot
does
of
not.
that in the
Use the
pipeline.
We have a lot of it in the
for the
pipeline.
general fund.
Yeah, and to be clear, Vice Mayor, I've never said, and I will never say, and I don't think any of us believe that we're trying to compete with the neighboring counties or cities on growth at all.
No.
In fact, we're trying to respond to deal with, and a little bit of that is some growth, so that we can build up some tax base to deal with some of those challenges, and rehouse them here. But it's not about competition.
No, we'll never win that fight. And
No,
I agree,
and
that's
not
what
the
we've
city
done
that we are.
Has been some response.
Yeah.
But what makes us the charming city is that 4-story height limit, is that
Right.
slower growth than the average Florida on most coastline.
So is stormwater, is what we're talking about good for where you are?
Yeah, I think after the holidays, I definitely look forward to adjusting our codes for stormwater and adding those. And there'll be certain projects that we may approve and maybe won't approve, I guess, if we're sticking, to it. I hear where Commissioner Bruner is coming from for what spawned this discussion, though, and the power's in our hands for a lot of these projects. We just simply can say no, and they can build by right if they want to. We don't have to approve these variances.
Amen.
Thank you. Commissioner Bruner, are you satisfied with the discussion so far?
Yes, it's been excellent, very happy.
Commissioners,
Thank you.
what's the pleasure of the board? I'd like to adjourn this meeting.
Now, let's stay around a couple hours.
Is there anything else?
We bring up these topics that get us to have a good discussion, and then we want to go home.
Hey, Mike, I'll sit here with you.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.